All right. So welcome everybody to our second Young Affiliates event for 2021. If you were not at our first in-person gathering a few months ago, we are glad that you were able to join us virtually today. So just so you all know, this will be recorded. So if you do have to leave early, we will go ahead and send out the link afterwards because it is going to be a pretty engaging panel. So yeah, and we will also be following up afterwards if you have any questions about Young Affiliates or Freedom School Partners or how to get them involved. So to kick us off, I just wanted to quickly reiterate the mission of Freedom School Partners. So Freedom School Partners promotes the long-term success of children by preventing stumble learning loss through igniting a passion for reading and inspiring a love of learning. What do the Young Affiliates do as a partner organization of Freedom School Partners? Young Affiliates is an affinity group of Freedom School Partners. The group supports the Freedom School mission as community ambassadors and through participation in meaningful service opportunities benefiting those scholars within the school. Who is eligible to become a member? It's open to college students and professionals under 40 who want to actively support the mission of Freedom School Partners. And what do we ask of Young Affiliates? So for our members, we ask to become a community ambassador for Freedom School Partners, become familiar with what we do, spread the good word, and participate in any of the following 3 ways, whether that's volunteering your time, donating your treasure, or helping with any functions like recruiting or promoting them. So that's who we are, and I'm Ben Garcia. I believe I'm handing it over to Glenda now.
Thank you so much, Ben. I do want to second a welcome to all of you for joining us, especially those of you who are en route to your homes from the office. I know this is a great time and also a challenging time depending on your work schedule. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit more about Freedom School Partners. I am the CEO of Freedom School Partners, and I do not count as a young affiliate, which is depressing, but that's okay. So I thank you for having me with you. So Ben already shared the mission of Freedom School. Just to tell you a little bit more, we provide summer learning opportunities that build literacy and social emotional skills for children who most need and can least afford that type of summer learning experience. Our program runs for 6 weeks in the summer. It is a 5-day-a-week program, so we run 8 to 3, Monday through Friday. And the Freedom School curriculum is culturally responsive. It's also evidence-based, and it works to affirm our scholars' identities and expose them to the broader community. Every day of Freedom School includes 2.5 hours of reading engagement and activities in the morning and enrichment activities in the afternoon. We also work to serve the whole child and the whole family. So we provide transportation to our program. We also provide 2 meals and a snack every day. And we also provide supplemental nutrition support to the families of our scholars. And we do a variety of family engagement activities throughout the duration of our program. We utilize servant leader interns as our classroom facilitators, and our servant leader interns are college students who are trained to deliver our integrated reading curriculum and also to act as role models and reflect the scholars that we serve and the communities that we serve. I'm thrilled to share with you that over the life cycle of our organization, we've served more than 10,000 children since our founding, and it is our hope that we will serve 1,000 children at multiple site locations next summer. At the core of Freedom School is our desire to instill self-efficacy in our scholars, that they can make a difference in themselves, their families, their community, their country, and their world through hope, education, and action. And really, we strive to help our scholars discover and define their dreams, and then to be a part of the ecosystem that closes the opportunity gaps that they face so that they can achieve these dreams. So that's just a little bit more about us and what we do as an organization. Again, thrilled to have you with us. I know that additional folks will be coming on as we get a little bit further away from that 5 o'clock hour. I know that you're going to find this panel very valuable and engaging. So we just appreciate you being with us. And with that, I'm going to introduce George Metz, who is Freedom School Partners Chief Strategy Officer. George has been with us since June 21st of 2021. We're thrilled to have him on board. He was previously engaged in a number of organizations here in Charlotte, including communities and schools. He has his own consulting company. And overall, he's really connected and committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion, to community cohesiveness and connection. And he is the caretaker of our partnerships. That's going to make him smile. And so we're thrilled to have him with us in this role. And I'm excited to introduce him to you tonight. So George, take it away.
Well, thanks so much, Glenda, and good afternoon, good evening, everyone. And those folks who are driving, I hope you're safe. So social engagement, let's define this topic. So it's described in many forms, but perhaps it's easier to speak about the characteristics of social engagement. And so as I was looking for this topic, I utilized the expertise of Wikipedia. And I love how it's defined. So it says social engagement is related to participation in collective activities which reinforces social capital and social norms. So what I extract out of this definition is that social engagement is about an exchange. So your position to exchange your time with interests in order to create transformational experiences, which leads to deeper relationships that can be institutionalized, I'll say, for greater good individually and collectively. So our objective here today, our objective is to learn from one another with intentionality on building relationships. And we'll expand our understanding of how to get engaged with areas that spark our interests. And we'll also learn about the professional benefits and all those things to keep in perspective as we engage socially. So with that being said, what I'm going to do now is pitch it back to Ben. And Ben is going to talk about our breakout and our networking format. We're definitely going to cover that and hear some authentic voices this evening. I'm certain of it. In saying that, let me go ahead and introduce our panelists. And for the sake of time, I know some folks have to jump off a bit early. I think, Angela, I think you have to get off a little early. Glenda, I know you have to slide out as well. So if you all of a sudden don't see them, they meant well. Just have some other obligations to take care of. But if it's okay with you guys, I want to go by first names, if that's fine. Okay, great. So what I'm going to do is, this is a young affiliates group, and so coming from not too far removed from college, I think that's an important place to start at, and so what I'm going to do is highlight the college and universities where folks attended, and anything specifically you guys want to share about yourself. I'll frame it like this: one thing that you want to share about yourself that you wish people knew, and I'm gonna open that up, and I'm gonna start, in fact, with my friend Brandon. Brandon is he attended Duke Law. And he's inclusive in the sense that he went to Carolina for undergrad. And so he's been at Novant for 2.5 years and was previously at Wells Fargo. So Brandon, what is one thing that you wish people knew about you?
That's a good question. I think, so this year through COVID, I've been wrestling with this, and some of my colleagues know, trying to be more vulnerable. So I think it is, and we were actually talking before this, and I joke with Carmen and George, I joke with you, that usually when I speak, I'm just going to wing it. But I think people don't really know that I'm actually, naturally, I was a shy kid. And someone reminded me this recently, that they remember me getting up somewhere, I think at Boy Scouts or church or something, and I didn't want to speak. And my dad made me speak. So I think it's one of those things where I would just say, particularly I would bring it back to a young professional, just sometimes stepping outside your comfort zone, you may not know where your strength lies until you do that. And probably more likely the things you're supposed to do, or the things you're naturally really good at, or the things that scare you the most.
Wow. Thanks for that. So Carmen, I'm going to call you up next. We got Carmen here?
Yes, I'm right here.
All right. Okay. So, hey, Carmen, good evening.
Hello.
So Michigan State is where Carmen obtained her master's degree in human resources. And she also went to Michigan State for undergrad in journalism and Spanish. And she's been with Novant for 1 year and a half. So Carmen, what's something that you wish people knew about you?
Sure. I would say that my background actually is in journalism. So even though my master's degree and all of my work experience since then is in the HR field in different industries, I always describe myself and think of myself as a writer. People think, I'm the HR lady or human capital professional. Absolutely. I've had the good fortune to do that. You can't do that without being a good communicator. I love words. I celebrate Grammar Day on March 4th, if you want to join me. And so I'm a language nerd. If I weren't doing this, I would be doing something probably in linguistics and would be more multilingual than I am.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks for that, Carmen. And so next up, we have Tammy Jones. So Tammy is from University of Virginia. She has her MBA from UVA. She also went to A&T. I went to Central, so I'm not too upset with you, Tammy, but we're going to get along this evening. She's been with Novant for 6 years. And previously, she was with the Consumer Lifestyle with Johnson & Johnson. And so glad to have you, Tammy. Give us something that you wish people knew about you.
Ever since you asked that question, I was thinking I'm pretty verbose most days, so a lot of people know a lot about me. But I think I'm still where Carmen, what she mentioned, and I actually started my career off as an accountant. So, and as I think about what that means, is you never really know where your passion lies. So I thought, starting, I wanted to be an accountant. I love numbers. I still love numbers to this day. I think when I think about accounting and auditing, what we used to do in that world is all about breaking things and solving puzzles. And I think that's what drives me still today. Mm-hmm. So that's where my passion started, not in marketing, but now I found a new career and love in marketing for the last 20 years, and I love it. But as a young professional, what I would say is don't worry about where you start. Find something, be good at it, and your passion will definitely follow. And you never know where that passion is going to lie. So just, get started and you'll find it.
That's great, Tammy. Thanks so much. So Angela, last but certainly not least, Angela attended Tennessee, has her master's in computer finance, and went to DePaul and has an undergrad in music. Also attended Indiana University and as a performance major, and has been with Novant for 4 years. So Tammy, Angela, I'm so sorry. Tell us about something that you wish people knew about you.
I think, funnily enough, Tammy could probably give some pretty interesting answers to that question. Yes. We've gotten to know each other pretty well the time we've been here. So, I like others, there is a lot sort of known about me. I don't have many secrets. One thing that I would love for others to know about me that, is not necessarily something that's unguessable, but I am astounded. On one hand, I'm astounded by the hesitancy that with which young professionals often approach me to ask for help or opportunity or just advice or questions, because I think of myself as a very approachable, totally want to help, want to learn about people, want to figure out a way to do something together. I think of myself as that sort of person. But then on the other hand, I remember, back when I was starting out, I remember, looking at, in fact, I'll tell you, probably not that early in my career. I was actually pretty senior. I had a VP level job, but I was young. I was just a young person. And I was in a very large company. I was listening to a member of the executive team speak. It wasn't the CEO, it was just one down. And he was, on stage in front of hundreds of people, and he was telling a story about something that happened over the weekend. And he mentioned having gone to the grocery store, and that's, something had happened at the grocery store. And I remember thinking to myself, he goes to the grocery store? I remember as clear as day. I'm like, wow, he goes to the grocery store on his own, It's so I guess maybe for whatever reason, sometimes early on, it's easy to think about people who hold large positions as being, living a different life than the ones that we're living at the time. And it's really not the case. We're all living the same sorts of lives. We have different sorts of things we do when we go into work, but otherwise, we grow and evolve as humans, but otherwise things are pretty much the same. So that's my only thing I want people to know.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Angela. That was great. And hopefully, so I'll tell you, we had about 30 folks that had registered this evening. And my hope is that these folks can get in and get some of this wisdom that I know you guys are going to share. But we're so thankful for those that are on. And, I know you're going to leave with extended value. So let's hop right into it. So this is a question that came up, and I think Candace actually just brought it up. And we'll dive right into it. And it's right off of what you were just talking about, Angela, literally, how can we, I'll say, show up as our authentic selves, right? In environments. And this question, I want you to think about this. Tammy, let's go to you first. Yeah, our authentic selves. What is we want to get concrete understanding of how specifically social engagement it plays into being your authentic self as it relates in your role. So think about the theme of social engagement and think about being authentic and how does it play into your role?
Great question. So what I would say is part of my role at Novant Health as a chief marketing officer, I have to sell ideas to other leaders in the organization that would align to before we go to market on topics. People buy into ideas and engagement around people they like and know. So if I have to sell a campaign or idea or program that I want to get other leaders to buy into, it helps that they know who I am as a person. It helps that we can have a conversation about just as people, that we know each other outside of work. They know authentically who I am. And if there is something in the ground or in a space that they don't like, that we can have a conversation and talk about it versus, staying in our own grounds in our own space and trying to be something that we're not in the room. So I would say being your authentic self, people get to know who you are. It makes you more effective at your job. You build relationships that are healthy at work, that leads to more happiness and leads to you being happier at your work and being more effective at your job. So in most roles, you can't do it if you're not building these relationships, and you can't build relationships if you're not being your authentic self, because people will see through it.
So good. Anybody want to add on to what Tammy said?
I would just add that social engagement is engagement. And, I'm in the business of making sure that folks are in a place where they can thrive and bring their full selves to work. I'm kind of over and have lived that life of having the work Carmen and then the after hours Carmen, and having my hair accordingly match whatever environment that was. So, you get to a point of, for me to really feel authentic, as Tammy mentioned, and just happy and enjoy what I do, the worlds have to blend, somehow. It doesn't mean that you're not keeping any part of yourself private, or, that may differ based on an introvert or extrovert, absolutely. But at the end of the day, social engagement is just another factor in engagement. And so it behooves all of us to figure out how to do that and to have the courage to do that as well.
So good.
All right. What Carmen said, it's hard to keep up the work self and personal self. Just makes life easier. Be you.
Yeah, George, I'll add on
something
that I once told someone who worked on my team. So this person wasn't at Novant Health, but they went off and had a discussion with the leader. And I asked him when they came back, I said, how'd it go? He said, oh, it was great. I knocked it out of the park. And I talked to the leader and she was like, that was terrible. And so there was a disconnect in what I told him. And this goes to your authentic self, right? If you put it in a triangle, and the smaller the distance between these 3 points, the better. And that is who you really are as a person, how people perceive you, and how you want people to perceive you.
Mm.
You have 2 or 3 that are like all over the place where I want you to perceive me as this person, but I'm really this person. I'm pretending at work. You're going to be unhappy. People are going to see you're not authentic. But the more you can minimize that and really bring your whole self and really align those things where you're not pretending in one place, acting in another, that really just helps you really just be in your best, or I don't want to say shape, but just bring your best every day to your job or even whatever you're doing in life. It could be outside in the community, as George mentioned.
Yeah. That's so good. And just thinking about the it takes a progression to get there. I think Carmen actually hit on, perhaps early in her career, there was one way she conducted herself, but she had to mature to this understanding and even get more comfortable with herself to present her full self and her best authentic self in every environment. So what advice would you give, Carmen, to someone that is going through that same process? It's like, how do even with the triangles that Brandon just mentioned, how do you grow to know yourself and develop this healthy intrapersonal relationship with yourself?
I think there are a few things. One is I like to observe, who are people who are well known in the organization where I am and who are admired or revered. What do they do? Because, for me personally, those aren't all the same people or the same type of people. There's much diversity there, but there's something special, some gravitas or approach that is really appealing. And that is something that I think is worth emulating. So I encourage you just to look around and see, who do you see and what are some tips that you would take from a handful of people? That's the concept of your own personal board of directors. Who will tell you, you may perceive yourself this way, but let me tell you how you're really perceived. Who are people with whom you can be authentic to help shape how you want to show up? And then I also think it's a matter of reading the room and choosing your battles. And so being your authentic self doesn't mean, being unprofessional. It doesn't mean, being argumentative. That's not it at all. It is showing up in a way that reflects your core values, seeing how those core values align with those of the organization, and then finding your voice and having the courage to use it. But I would say not to the point where it's overtaking the conversation or speaking over others or not allowing space for others to do that as well. What are the 1 or 2 things that you want to be known for, and have some consistency about that.
So good. Anybody else want to add on?
I'm the only one that hasn't spoken. I cannot improve upon that.
Oh,
wonderful. That was wonderful. I'll echo everything Carmen said, and in fact, love all the stories.
Absolutely. Well, Angela, thanks so much for stepping forward. We was going right to you next, in fact. So conflict, right? So conflict is something that, comes up in work and comes up in life in general. Tell us about a valuable lesson, perhaps across your career, that you've learned in dealing with conflict.
Well, I think the important thing is to understand that having different perspectives about how something should be handled, with the assumption that everyone wants the right outcome for the company or for the organization we're serving at the time, I think that's a normal part of everyday business.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Mm-hmm.
We all have to be able to have conversations about things that about which we might strongly disagree. And I try to leave emotion out of those conversations. Yeah. I find that when I get emotional during such conversations, it's because I'm assuming ill intent on the part of the other person. I'm assuming some sort of ulterior motive, and which may or may not be there. And so it takes a lot of discipline for us to set aside those assumptions that we might have formed or might be forming in real time about the other person in the conversation or the set of people in the conversations. And if you can set the emotion aside, it's amazing how quickly you can avoid a conflict and get to a resolution. One example that was always very tough for me early on, I worked, of course, came up through the technology world full of, 20, 30 years ago, it was full of very opinionated, older white men, very good at what they did. But I wasn't one of them. And they'd talk over me in meetings. I'd say something, someone else would repeat the same thing, and it was the greatest idea they'd ever heard when the other person said it. All the usual, everyone's experienced that at some time or another. And what I found is that when I no longer chose to, literally inside of someone's foyer, when I chose to set aside my emotions about how that made me feel, and instead inserted myself into the conversation in a way that was helpful. So for example, hold on. Before we continue, help me understand why what I just suggested isn't going to work. Help me, oh wise ones, understand. I left that part out. Help me understand why what I just said was ignored. That's not what I said, but you actually just stop it and ask for help, ask for clarification. And if somebody is coming after you, trying to make a disagreement personal to trigger a reaction, or just because they don't know any other way to have a difficult conversation, then that's when you get to act like the adult in the room. And that's when you have a chance to say, let's just take a step back. Let's remember what we're discussing. Let's remember the reason why we're having this conversation. And I know that you want the best thing, whatever, make sure you give the person credit and let them hear you give them credit for wanting to do the right thing and bringing the right tool sets to the conversation, and leave your ego aside. That's the only way to get through difficult conversations.
So good, Angela. And I love that you brought emotions into the picture, into the conversation. So emotional intelligence, as I understand it, is about having an understanding of your emotions and being intelligent in your emotion and being competent with what is coming, and being able actually to trace that emotion sometimes back to an experience. It could be trauma related. It could be something you experienced as a child. But it has its way of showing itself sometimes in the boardroom, and so that's very brilliant. I'll say that you shared the emotions and how you set that aside and questioning the emotion. And so just with that said, I really want to stay right there. A great question that came in was, how do you balance being respectful of your managers? So being respectful of managers and people, that perhaps are higher up on the hierarchy or whatnot, and other teammates, members as well, and being able to speak up for your ideas and yourself at the same time maintaining respect. And I'll open that up for anyone that wants to speak to that.
I'll jump in. I want to build on, I agree completely with what Angela said around emotion. And it's important that you're aware, because she's right, you want to keep emotions out. Sometimes that's really difficult for people. And it has always been really difficult for me. I react emotionally, whether I do it outwardly or not, I feel it. And so I think the learning from me was recognizing my emotion in the moment before I actually responded. So it requires me to give myself space to react, and then I respond. So one of the tools I created for myself was to force myself to slow down, is to repeat back what I think I'm hearing. Not what you said, but what I heard, which are not always the same. You may say that you disagree with something I wrote, but what I heard is you think I'm stupid, right? So because here's what I think, here's what I took away. And so in that moment, it one forces me to slow down. Two, I get a chance to express what I'm feeling in a way that is presented in a way to let them to respond to correct me, because my feelings are not always, in my head, nothing to do with what they said. But I think that's really important. So I think, when you're talking about respect for managers and others, I think respect comes naturally and easily, except when your emotions get in the way. So what I would say is, one, you have to be aware, you have to know your weaknesses and strengths. And if you're like me, who likes to respond at a trigger, you've got to figure out what do you do for you to make sure that you don't do that in a way that gets you in trouble. Now I had to learn, right? I had to respond a couple of times that got me in trouble, that I recognized the mistake in what I was doing. But then I had to figure out how to correct that. And how do I do that for me in a way that's authentically me? I still have to show up with me as I'm still feeling what I'm feeling. And I've got to deal with that in order for me to be effective. And so you got to figure out what that means you have to do. So I would say, find whatever that is for you, to make sure, one, you're aware of what you're feeling and what emotions are actually in play. And two, what do you do that's effective for you to control that?
That's good. So sticking within the law, Brandon, as it relates to this question, and we're not seeking legal advice, but just in this realm, how can you, and Carmen, obviously want to hear from you in this space as well, but how can you address a manager and in a way that perhaps you totally disagree? And is there a way that the law even protects you in doing that?
Yeah, well, as I advise people, first of all, I can't give you legal advice. As I advise people, there is things what the law says, and then there's the practical implications, right? Which are often more impactful and more relevant. And so let me just take a step back. So, because part of the question you asked was, how do you deal with managing and dealing with managers? And I think your two objectives as anyone reporting to a manager, at least my two objectives have been to make my manager's job easier and to make them look good. And as long as I do those two things, I usually don't have problems, right? I make you look good and I take things off of your plate and I anticipate your needs before you even know that you need them, and preparing things that help you out and make you look good. And that also means in some cases, not overstepping them and not shining, but letting the manager sort of shine. Now, where the tricky part of the balance, and this is where you might get into difficulties with your manager if your manager just takes all your work, right, and never gives you the credit for it. And there are those cases where it happens. And I think what you can do, George, is I think Angela may have said it earlier, and maybe I can't remember, maybe we all said it, is trying to be transparent, realizing that managers are people. Sometimes it may be their own fears or insecurities that they're not even aware of, and they didn't intentionally do these things. So a polite way of just saying, hey, in this instance, hey, notice you didn't mention that I was involved in this. Really like to try to get some exposure. You could handle it that way, right? And so I think it's just having that transparent conversation and developing that relationship early on where people know that you're coming from a good place. And then if that doesn't work, then more than likely, I mean, if it's really bad, right? If you're being harassed or, something like that, then you go down the legal route, talk to Carmen and HR. But if it's not that, and it's just personalities, then I think that's where you rely on your board of directors to just talk to people and just get that advice. And maybe you move on to a different opportunity with a different manager. Sometimes that's just the only way, but I am interested in Carmen's advice too.
Absolutely. And this is what we want, Carmen.
Well, I think about your question, George, and what's on my mind is, am I even in the right place? So where we're talking about how do you offer respect, the environment might be challenging, for example. I think it's a real opportunity for us as talent, on the marketplace, for our employer to continue to woo us. So that's one of the things that I think about every day. How do I keep all 35,000 Novant Health team members engaged? Because I want them to stay, and I'm trying to win them over and over and over again every day. And so I just think I can offer respect if I'm in a place where I feel like it's right. So sometimes it's really actually not you. It is the environment or the culture. And maybe there's another industry, another organization where how you show up, it just feels better for you and feels better for them. But I also don't encourage job hopping, right? And so, some of it I would just say there's a portion of it that this is a job, it's a career. I love it. I'm interested in it. But for ourselves, for our own sanity, I think we have to have our own boundaries and know that this is something that should be mostly good on most days. There are some portions of it, some things even on my goals list that aren't my favorite thing to do. So how can I do them in a way that feels better, that doesn't feel like drudgery, that how can I do it quickly and responsibly and sort of move on to the next thing that's more interesting. And then in terms of talking with leaders directly, I talk to folks, and I would say this is across all ages and all group demographics. This isn't a young person thing, but there really is the difference between confidence and arrogance. And so I've heard some of my co-panelists really talk about standing in your power, but knowing, what you hear is the balance. How am I offering something good to the people around me that they can take pride in or share in the glory in? That's not going to hurt you. If you give credit to people who work for you, who work above you, who work with you, that is really finesse and a skill that I would say that earlier in your career that you can learn that and get comfortable with that, it will be better all the way around. And, people see, even when I have a team and when things come to me, presented maybe as sort of from an area, I see things. I don't only talk to 6 people all day long. And well, actually, I think that these other folks were there. And, maybe we can think about, as Brandon does a really good job of, how can we include them? How can we bring them to the meeting or have them be showcased for something? Angela does a great job of that as well. And I would say that what I see there is something that I like to coach leaders around. It's how are you including folks who don't just report to you? Again, we need to get out of this, the small circle of just the same people that I talk to all day long.
That's good. That's so good. Just anybody want to say anything else about this? All right, cool. All right, so just moving right along with the let's talk about social engagement and some of the factors that I'll just say some things that interest you that tug on your heart as it relates to causes and organizations that you may support. If I can just have anybody just speak candidly about that, it's just like what tugs on your heart. Simple question is that. And what are you passionate about regarding social issues? Yep. Thanks, Angela.
As you know, I'm very passionate about a number of things. One of them being, and the reason I say as you know, because I have an opportunity to serve as a volunteer for Freedom School Partners on the board. And one of the great things about this organization is that it creates opportunity, creates access for kids who otherwise might not have an opportunity for any sort of enrichment over the summer in between school breaks. The platform that's been developed by Freedom School is potentially expandable across so many other. We're focused on literacy, obviously. I believe we have very strong feelings about the comma as well, just to be clear. But we also have an opportunity to make sure those kids have a safe place to be during the day, and they get great meals while they're there, and they have opportunities to meet people from the community that they might not otherwise encounter. And it's this sort of access that creates, as by the way, these sorts of events do for us, opportunities for those scholars to see beyond the walls of where they live, see beyond the bounds of how their life has been defined up to that moment, and gain new perspective about the world that we're living in. So that's why I love programs like Freedom School. I think Freedom School does it extraordinarily well. I'm also very passionate, as you can imagine, because of where I work, about bringing access to healthcare, to quality healthcare, so that everybody can be as healthy as they possibly can be. And part of that's access to care, and part of that is a greater quality of care that they can access, right? High quality care is what we want to provide for everyone. And so there are a number of organizations that not just in the care provider space, which is where I work, but where all of us work on the panel, except for George. But we you know. Never say never, George. But we also rely on our partners in research. You know, we rely on our partners in pharmacy. We rely on our partners who are discovering and developing life-saving medicines, like the vaccine that is now allowing me to be in a room that's full of people next door, right? That otherwise I would not have been able to do. So anything that we can do to provide access for people to have opportunity to live better lives, live the best possible version of themselves, that's what I want to do. It's a big, big problem. Can't be contained to one space.
I love that you pulled out the theme access. So, I mean, across the board, like for both scenarios that you described, it's essentially like creating access for people. So I just really picked up on that. And I was born at Presbyterian Hospital. So I'm part of the family. So yeah, anybody else? Share with us what tugs at your heart and what gets you going.
Yeah, I'll jump in. There's some connectivity to what Angela said. You know, I was raised by a single mom. I was the first in my family to go to college. I was raised in neighborhoods that didn't have access to the great leaders that you see on this panel today. And I think that has such a huge impact on how that shapes what people and kids and children believe is possible in terms of based on the exposure they have. So what truly drives me is I had the opportunity to have access to programs, not freedom schools specifically, but examples like that pulled me out of my neighborhood and gave me exposure and helped reshape what I think my reality could be, and let me think beyond what I was seeing was possible. And I would say that's what drives and feeds my soul right now. I actually had the opportunity to volunteer on a YBLA because I'm familiar with it. It's also focused on youth development. And that really excites me. I love when I'm able to connect with young people and tell them my story, help them see what's truly possible, help remove all the limitations that they've created in their mind that maybe not there, and really help them, achieve, in their mind the impossible. That's what really moves and excites me. So that's why I love the Freedom School program. That's why I love to be connected to this program, and I love to do work in this space around youth development. So it feeds my soul.
It's awesome, Tammy. I love that your life. What I picked up from that is it's literally you converted what some would deem as a liability to an asset, and you're giving that back. So and Tammy and John Martin are awesome assets to our community as well. So shout out to YBLA. All right, Brandon, right along. I see you on my screen, man. What drives you?
I would say purpose, because I think there are a lot of things that drive me. So one of the things I could have shared at the beginning is that I wanted to be an artist when I grew up and when I was a kid, and I still do a lot of art now with my kids. I'm getting back into it, but decided to go down the more practical path. And so art is one of the things that I'm heavily involved in the Charlotte community and have been, and support artists from, the Beckler Museum all the way down to the artists on the street designing shoes. So that's one thing. And then I get pulled in so many directions that I really had to funnel in what is my purpose. And I feel like my purpose and what I'm best at is helping organizations reach their potential. And also, I will say, like Angela said, very much providing access in whatever form that comes in for opportunity for the next Brandon Neal, whoever it may be in Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools, to be able to be here giving this speech one day, right? So that's sort of, I would say, how I begin to narrow down all the things that tug at my heartstrings. But largely it is, just creativity that I see in our community, opportunity, very much so education. So I think this is appropriate here, but education and literacy is a big thing that's part of our family and that we support.
It's awesome. Thanks, Brandon. And Carmen?
For me, like Brandon, I think there are lots of opportunities to participate or to use your voice. And I would say, especially if you're a leader of color, The higher you go, the more popular you are to be on boards and other things. And, I think that you really have to think about, how am I honoring my family and myself and things that are interesting to me, and sort of channeling my energy. So for me, I come from a family of educators. My mom was known in the Detroit area where I'm from. And I have always seen the power of education. And so I'm on a board for a community college. And one of the things that I really enjoy is that it's just so level setting. It's so accessible. It is very difficult to not be able to go there, because of the way that this college really reaches out in every way and tries to help people put a plan together so that they can get there and thrive and take time off if needed, or whatever it may be. The other thing I like to do is to surprise people. People will make up stories about sort of your background based on what they might imagine you look like. So I'm, first gen, but also like middle class, good schools, whatever, and where I'm from. English as a first language, actually. And so I say that because I've been appointed to the Governor's Council for Latino Affairs. And to me, what I'm most excited about is really showing the diversity of Latin people in this country. It's not everything that you see on whatever news outlet you watch. It's people who really come from many different countries, many different languages within that, some who don't even speak Spanish. And so we're more than what's sort of on a commercial or movie clip. And I'm excited about tying it back to what I said earlier about using language and the power of that to tell stories about really the diversity within. All of this, same as everybody else has said, leads back to access and really highlighting the world of talent who is ready to be engaged and to join us. Yeah.
That is just so good. I love that you that the pointed focus, and I love the intentionality of the narrative shift as well. So thanks for that, Carmen. So what we want to do now with our last few minutes or whatnot, just like to open it up for those that are in the audience. And I don't know if we have anybody who's put anything in the chat. I haven't been watching it, Mark. But I just want to open it up. We don't have to be so formal about it. If there's anyone that you would like to speak with specifically, please call and call them by the first names. They've given us permission to do that. And so and just ask them your question.
Hey, good evening, all. Thank you so much for the masterclass really that you've given this evening. I know we're recording the session, so the young professionals who will watch this will definitely be impacted later on. But one thing that I'd love to ask when I get in contact with individuals of your caliber, what are you reading right now?
Great question.
Was that directed to somebody?
Yeah.
If not, I'll jump in. Yeah. Oh, sorry. I was going to say Untamed by Glennon Doyle. Recommend.
I'm reading a lot. Go ahead, Tammy. I
just grabbed the book, so I'm just starting, but it's called The Power of Moments. So I'll let you know how it turns out, but I'm excited about it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm one of those people who starts a lot of books and has a bunch open, so I'm reading a bunch of stuff at the same time or listening to audio. And they are often kids' books. So I just read this book to our kid, Amari and the Night Brothers, to our kids. It's actually like African-American female version of Harry Potter. It's amazing. So if you have any young people in your life, they're making it into a movie at some point. It's an amazing book. Kids loved it. I just finished the book Caste, which is, if you're talking about sort of racial, social inequity in our country, it's really, really a really good book. And I'm also surprised I'm going back and listening to The Great Gatsby, just because I feel like we're getting close to those times again. So I just thought it was interesting. It popped up on my Amazon Kindle and I free read, so I'm listening to that.
I'm going to mention three things. First, and it's so funny. This is absolutely true. It's total coincidence. I just started to reread Eat, Shoots, and Leaves. So I want a head nodding from every grammar and nerd and punctuation nerd in the house. So I just picked it up because I was having a conversation with someone about it, and I ordered a couple of copies, one for the person with whom I was speaking, and then one for myself. to reread. But that's coincidental. There's a book that it's not something I'm reading right now, but it's something I read a couple months back, and I've been telling everyone about it subsequently. It's a book called Loon Shots by Sophie Bacall. And it is I was turned off by the title because because the subtitle says something like how crazy ideas help win wars, cure cancer, and all the rest of it. And I thought, well, this is going to be about some sort of, it's going to be some sort of innovation book, which, there are a million of those. But in fact, it's Sophie Bacall is a theoretical physicist and has written about the importance of systems and the laws of physics and how they apply to human systems, how they apply to our business operations, and pretty much any organization in which we're engaged. So I found it's a beautifully written book. Very, very well worth the time. So those are my two.
Said it's called Loonshine?
It's called Loon Shots, like
Loon
Moonshots, but with an L.
Okay.
And it's written by a guy named Safi, S-A-F-I, Bacall, B-A-H-C-A-L-L.
Right.
I like the question.
Say again?
I said it was a good question. I like it.
It's a great question. Great question.
I thought Brandon was going to say he's reading the 4 books from the authors that are coming up that are showing up for the public library.
Oh yeah, I should be doing that. Yes, that's the correct answer. Yes, I'm reading those books. That's right.
Yeah. Yep. Tammy and Carmen, what are you guys reading right now? Or do you have time to read?
No, I just started reading Power of Moments. So
okay,
Power of Moments. Yeah, I just started, so I was recommended to me, so I'm looking forward to it, but I'm just getting started.
Good. Yeah, I think Audible is acceptable as well. If you don't have that time, maybe in your car, you can lean in and listen to some Audible.
Sure, I had mentioned Untamed by Glennon Doyle, and then I also say that I'm always reading some kind of mystery, not horror, a mystery.
Yeah,
isn't life a mystery? And I love trying to figure it out, and I'm pretty good at it too. So
nice. Yeah, I forgot you did mention Untamed. Yeah, I just started this one book. I'm challenging myself. It's called Warren Buffett and the Interpretation of Financial Statements, and so it's like a realm that I'm not so it's not my area of expertise, and so I wanted to challenge myself to what does it seem like reading financial statements. So that's where I'm at. Interesting question came up. So you mentioned being more popular for board recruitment as you climb in your career. How do you discern whether or not it's a good fit, and maybe beyond the cause itself? So how do you determine if the board is a good fit, not?
Yeah, I mean,
I would. Oh, go ahead, Angela.
No, please, you go.
Yeah, I think so. I would say it varies. It differs over time. When I was so in my 20s, I would pretty much say yes to everything, and I'm not so sure that wasn't a strategy because I really wasn't sure I know there are a lot of things I was interested in. I wasn't really sure what I was good at. I really wasn't sure what I was passionate about. I would also say that doing that, my last 3, in full transparency, my last 3 jobs, I don't think I would have gotten if I hadn't done boards out in the community, because it gave me the opportunity to lead in spaces with other leaders where they could then say, oh, I've seen him lead in the community on this board, and so I know he can do this job. And so I would be very hesitant at this point. I think there's an exploration period that you're doing, but there will come a point in time when you are on a board and it feels like work. And for instance, if I felt like at this moment, oh man, I really don't want to talk to Freedom School partners at this point at night, I'd rather be doing something else. And that's probably not the organization that I need to be a part of.
Yeah, that's a good point.
When I feel like an extra job, that's when I know it's really not aligned with sort of where I want to be. And then I would also say, as you grow through your life, so I started some boards that I just did because it sounded interesting. Now that I have kids, right, a lot of my boards are focused on, as Angela mentioned, the library, CMS Schools Foundation. They're more focused on what would have direct impact, if not on my family, but on people in my similar situation with kids my age. And so that's sort of starting to focus to make sure it's the right fit for me. Is it something that our family can participate in together because I have limited capacity? And does it align with what our family believes and what we prioritize? So that's sort of how I would sort of navigate it. But I think at this phase, really, I'd be hesitant to say no to too many things.
Yeah, it's great advice. Great advice. But I also love that you became focused later on, Brandon, and you know, and so
that's some help.
Yeah. So that's good. All right, next question.
I was just going to add to that. I had the same approach as Brandon early on. I was just happy to be invited. But I think one of the key takeaways is you want, even if you are early in career, you want to be known enough that a leader who is asked to make a board recommendation would think of you. So that to me, that's part of why you say yes to a project or why you say yes to many things that come up, because you keep growing from there. Often that first connection will lead to other things that can lead for pretty exciting engagements or job referrals or whatever it may be.
That's great. It's great advice. And I'll just say that, being asked to join boards, sometimes you have to look at it and say, hey, is it just advice that they want in this moment? So perhaps that could be supplemented by a lunch, instead of committing fully to the board. So that's just something you have to consider as well. One other question is, and I think, Carmen, this will be great for you to answer. You talked about job hopping.
Mm-hmm.
As someone who is now a little over 4 years out of school, I have a lot of friends and who are now changing from their first job post-college to another. How did you decide when it was time to pursue a new job or pursue graduate school?
Sure, a couple of things. So for me, I went to graduate school right away, which is not what others did. I did it for a few reasons. One, I was offered a scholarship, and it was a way for me not to count on my parents anymore. Two, I saw my mother go through her doctoral program, and I saw firsthand how difficult that was with her two daughters and my dad. And while the family rallied around her, it was just hard. And I always thought, okay, just go right away and get a master's degree in something. So for me, that plan worked. But in terms of hopping, I'm just somebody who always says yes to the coffee. And in fact, I've gotten all of my best jobs when I was quite happy at my current job. And there wasn't something, I didn't leave because things were bad. Now there's one situation that was less good than others that comes to mind. But truly, it's just, I always say, yes, sure, I'm happy to meet with you. I'm happy to talk to you. And it could turn into something where I'm giving somebody advice or talking about my experience. And then in some cases, as a surprise, almost, it turned into a job opportunity. The other big thing that I think all of us should consider is, can I realize my full potential at this place? Mm-hmm. Can I see that I could grow more in the role that I'm in? Or can I hop over to something else within this organization? Can this organization see for you what you see for yourself? And if not, then that's probably a good time to keep your options open.
Wow, that's such great advice. Brandon, you want to add to that anything?
No, I think what Carmen said was spot on. I would say too, someone gave me the great advice one time where I was earlier in my career. I was thinking about, should I do this? Should I do this? And she said, sometimes the best move you can make is not a move at all. Mm. That's terrible advice. But actually she was spot on, right? Because I was just moving for the sake of moving, or because everyone else was moving instead of running my own path. And then I realized when I was just patient, an opportunity actually came my way that I wasn't expecting. And instead of trying to force it, just as Carmen mentioned, there are signs that come your way. Now, there's another question of, will you listen to those signs? Because sometimes the signs tell you to make a lateral move or to make a move backwards to take forward. So I think a lot of people don't listen to the right moves, but there's usually a sign that tells you this is not the place I want to be. The last thing I'll mention to Carmen's point is what I've always done is, and it's interesting. So Carmen and I actually report to the same person, but look at the person above you and how they're like, how happy they are. Like, is there someone, do I want to be this person? Right. And one of my first jobs working at a law firm in New York, I wasn't sure that I wanted that at that stage of my career with kids. Like, I don't know if I want to be that person in the office still at 3 a.m. And so I think that's how you kind of know too, is looking ahead to, as Carmen mentioned, of what that might look like for you and if you want to be there.
It's great wisdom. Great wisdom. Tammy, I'm going to turn this one to you. This is a question. So how do you ensure that your contacts don't become echo chambers? And so that you know you're hearing diverse views and perspectives?
So I think it's a great question. I think first, even within your echo chamber, sometimes it's the questions that you're asking. And when sometimes you need to reframe the question, to with people that you trust to get the really candid feedback. So I think there's opportunity to make sure that you're engaged in that echo chamber, even if you're within it, and getting them, those people, those voices that you trust and who know you well, asking them the right question, not to reinforce something you believe, but asking the opposite question. Ask them, what could I do better? Or how should I have done that differently? It reframes the conversation a bit so they can still be supportive of you and still give you candid feedback. The other thing that I would say is expand your network, expand your network. And I would say, look for the people that you admire, that you like what they're doing. They have a job that you may want one day, or whatever it may be, reading a book that you like, or driving a car you want to have one day. Build that network, get to know them, have a coffee with them. And I think expanding that network will not only help make sure that you're not only listening to the echo chamber, but it also give you more exposure to open you up for things that you didn't even know to ask about, or get you closer to where you might want to be one day.
Wow. Anybody else want to speak to that?
I'll add that I think one of the best ways to get feedback is to ask about something else, or as somebody else mentioned earlier, just have people restate what you think you were talking about. So I'm a direct person. Not everybody loves that, and a brown woman, that's okay. And so because I have a clear vision where the puck is going, right? And so I'm going to speak to that. I'm down there. And what I do, because once you're a leader, you have to be really intentional about it. I'll ask people to restate, and I'll most often end with, what do you need from me? And people will sometimes flip it. Oh, thank you, blah, blah, blah. Okay, specifically, is there like a thing I can buy to make your job easier? Is it, is there something you want to stop doing? And you have to just push more to get authentic feedback.
Good, yeah.
And so I have found that helps, because sometimes when people restate, they restate it in a way that's not at all what you intended and sounds harsher, and you can get feedback that way. I'll hear, oh, wow, if the person heard it in this harsh way, it's either their insecurity or my directness, something's going on, that's feedback for me to choose to pay attention to or not pay attention to. And then the other thing is that I'll be vulnerable and just say, is there other observations you have about me or feedback? And I'll tell people, and if it's mean, I'll cry. And so, please tell me, but be as kind as you would want to hear it as well, but give me something that I could do something with. Like, I'm not really a fan of just opening up the door for just tell me something kind of mean, because we can get that on social media.
Wow. Yeah, tweet that. That's good. Well, do we have anything else? Anybody else want to ask any other questions from our panelists? Going once, twice, 3 times. All right. Well, folks, I just want to offer my gratitude, certainly from Freedom School partners. We thank you so much for just sharing your wisdom, and thank you for offering up a part of your evening. Hope it's not your whole evening, but for offering a part of your evening up, because everyone's saying that they learned so much. The chat is just blowing up. So we're really grateful, and personally, I thank each of you as well for the light that you've shared this evening. And so, in saying that, I will turn it over back over to Ben to close us out.
Yes, once again, I really want to echo that thanks. As you kind of heard in my question earlier, my preface to my question, I'm really grateful for the wisdom that you've put out there for the young professionals who, like I said, will be listening to this recording later on. The impact that you've had will reverberate. So thank you so much again for your time. Thank you to those who showed up. For those who were here and they're listening to the recording later on, thank you for coming. Just some next steps in terms of young affiliates. We will be sending out some volunteer opportunities coming soon via email for our registrants. There will also be a link for financial commitments that if you'd like to support Freedom School Partners. And then we are hopefully coming out with some details soon for spring 2022 event. So once we get a little bit more details finalized, opportunities for volunteering will go out. So thanks so much all.